All right, so in our previous class, we looked at the definition of what a dependency is. So while I'm going to recap that definition, I'll also be putting our necessary softwares together. That our VS Code, our browser, and of course, we put on our development server. Right. So we're defining that I'll be doing that as well. So in our previous class, we looked at dependencies, and then we said that dependencies are what basically functions, right? That exists within our application in which our route function actually depends on. So that function then becomes a dependency. Do you get that? So they're basically function that lives within our applications, and then they can be passed to our route function. And then since they can be passed to our route function, that makes them a dependency to our route function. Do we get that? So that's basically what a dependency is. And in today's class, we are going to see how we can implement that. Okay, so how we can create these functions and see how our route function can depend on them. Okay, so that's what we are going to do in this class. Like I said, I think in our previous class, I think a class before our previous class, that our classes will tend to be short because these concepts are quite simple to implement. So once we implement this concept and then we tend to understand it, then we call it off for the class. Right, so that's basically how our classes will tend to be as we proceed further. They tend to be shorter. So for those of us that usually come like after an hour, it may be that one day you come after an hour and the class has finished. And then you have to wait till whenever the video is available on YouTube. So I saw there's need to be coming to class early. Mr. Duncan, from your hand is up. You have questions?
Yes, sir. Is it that class did not hold the last time?
Yes, network kicked us out. Keep misbehaving, and as such, we could not hold our class for the past 1 hour. We were struggling with network.
Okay, that means you have not taught this before
No,
because I did not see any video on YouTube. I was just checking. I did not see.
no. This is what you were supposed to do in our previous class.
Okay, sir.
All right. Okay, so as usual, we just do this step, which we do almost in all our entire classes. We do this step. So we simply navigate to our project folder, we activate the environment, and then we put up the project folder on VS Code. On VS Code, and then we start writing this, implementing this concept of dependencies. So we have different kinds of dependencies, all right? So we have a global dependency and we have sub-dependencies. And dependencies can come in any form, right? But the most common form are usually functions, right? But then they can also come as classes, right? They can also come as classes. Mr. Duncan, if your hand is up again.
Sir, please, can you explain the meaning of dependencies again?
All right. Yeah. All right. So this is our file. All right, so this is what dependencies is. So they're basically functions that your route function or application depends on. So as far as your route function or your entire application is depending on that function becomes a dependency, right? So it can be a function as well, it can be a class. So they are either functions or they are classes. Or they are classes. Right. So they can either be a function or they can either be a class. But then once your application or once your route function is what start depending or start hoping or waiting for a specific function to execute in order for the route function to go ahead to execute, and that function can be termed a dependency. You understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is what we left off. Okay. So in our previous class we wanted to actually do what to create this function, all right? So, but for this particular track, we are going to focus on only functions as dependencies, right? So I don't want to go into classes as dependencies. And the reason for that is that in our previous, in our days of Python, I did not cover classes. So I don't want to bring in classes here when that was not actually covered then, all right? So for this particular track, we're going to focus solely on functions as dependency. So there are functions are dependency. So to create this function, like, there are usual functions that we've been creating during back then during our days of basic Python programming. So they are similar functions. Okay, it's similar to your route function there, except that this function can be passed as a dependency to either your route function or to your entire application. Okay, so we created this function here, all right, and then this function here, we called it dependency one, right? And then we basically want to return a variable called result, okay? And this result is basically just going to be a sum of 10 plus 10, right? This can be considered as well as a demo, as a sample dependency function, right? So your dependent function can be as long as possible, right? It can contain as many code as possible. So this is what we're going to use for the illustration sake. So that could be considered as our dependency. And we'll have as many dependency in one application as possible. So we're not limited to only one dependency. You can have as many as you want. Right. So assuming we have this dependency, right? And then we're gonna have one route, and then we're gonna make that route to be dependent on that particular function that we just created. So I'll cut this route right here. I'll cut it from the top and just bring it after the dependency, because remember the way Python still works is that of course your function needs to execute needs to exist before actually referencing it, right? So unlike other programming language like C++ and Rust, okay, so you don't necessarily need to place the function before the invocation, but for Python the function needs to exist before doing what? Invoking that function. So what I mean, I simply mean that this function cannot come I'm sorry, that this function cannot come before it's been invoked. So after it's being invoked, meaning that I cannot put this function right here and then come up here and invoke that function. That will not work, right? So Python will turn error that function is not available at that point, because at that point, Python reads your code line by line. So at that line, Python is not yet of that function. So as such, your function needs to come before your route, or before wherever you want to do what to invoke it. It should do what it should exist before that point. So that loss here applies here. That loss here applies here. Okay, so now we assume this function to be what our dependency, and we assume we want this particular route here to be our usual route, right? Our application route, an endpoint. So we can make that function there to be a dependency of that route. So once a function becomes a dependency of a route, it simply means that before your route function gets to process, that dependency function do what executes already, right? That dependency function executes already. So what do I mean? Let's try this out. So we put on our server. So basically just do that, and since you're running from VS Code, I have to switch the terminal to command prompt. So that actually works. Okay, so now we have to make use of uvcon, and then the file name in this case what is main, and then followed by the instance of fast API, and then dash reload. Okay, so that should do. And let's just go ahead and visit that route, or that endpoint rather. So going to our browser, so we just put this here and then we navigate there, and then we have what? We have the appropriate message, right? We have the appropriate message. So at times we may actually want to do what? To execute certain functionality in our application, right? Before finally probably doing what? Sending out the request. So let's assume that that in order for us to do what? To actually send back this message here saying our first API endpoint, right? That we intend for a specific action to do what to happen. So the action of being what of adding 10 plus 10 to what to happen. Probably our application what is waiting on that result, or probably we see need to do what to use that application or that result in what in our route function. So in that case, then we can do what we can make it in a way that fast API will do what we simply execute this function first before doing what getting to our route function itself. All right. So how do we do this? How do we do this? First of all, we can tell fast API that this function here is what is a dependency of this route. So it means that it's waiting for, or like sorry, that this route here what is waiting for it what for that function to what to execute to further right to further move ahead to do what to get to our route function. And how do we let fast API to know this? We simply import the depends um function. So we can import the depend function in the same directory where you have your path query and the rest of them. So you can just put a comma there and put your depend. So there is a function they call depend. And with that function, right, you can explicitly, similar to how we have path query and the rest of them, we can explicitly let fast API know that this specific function, right, should be considered as a dependency, should be considered as a dependency. And how would that work? Now, in your route or wherever you want to pass it as a dependency, we simply go to the route function itself. We simply go to the route function itself, and then we can say, all right, probably that we are waiting for a result somewhere, right? We are waiting for a result from our dependency. But then if we leave if we leave the result like that, fast API will automatically consider it as well as a query parameter. So as such, we can explicitly let fast API know, okay, that this man here is a dependency. So as such, that function should execute first before even getting to our route function. So we do that by simply letting fast API know that this is a dependency. You can either annotate this, or you can actually pass it as a as a keyword variable to your route function. As a keyword variable to your function. So how would we do this? So to do this, we simply say, okay, probably we are waiting for this result. Okay, so I can pass this result to my route function and say that this result should hold a value of depends. So this depends take in either your function name or your class name, and then will automatically execute that function for you before even getting to the route function itself. So I can go ahead and do what I'm passing our function name. In this case, our function name here is this dependency one. So now once you pass in your function name, you don't want to invoke that function. Like, what do I mean? You don't want to come in here and do this and do that. So you basically just want to pass in the function name. Fast API will do the invocation on its own. You don't have to invoke it. So with that, what happens is that when someone tries to navigate, or when you navigate to this particular endpoint, what happens is that this function gets to execute first, and then the value from that function or the value from that dependency, you can access it within your route function. So if we needed to make use of result, then I could just simply come here and say, okay, fine. Probably the final result was probably get the value of the result from the dependency, right? And then at the end of it, probably add 100 to whatever result, whatever value came from that result itself. And then maybe we can do what pass the final result at the end, if at all we intended to do what to make use of that value from that dependency. So I could just come here and put final result, final result, and then but put finally. All right, and that is that. So if we go back again to our function and then our route rather, and then we try to access this route again, then we should at some point have 120, all right, 20 coming from where? From the dependency itself. So if we actually want to see how that actually works, okay, what we could do is, okay, within our route function, I could just put a print statement, a very simple print statement there. I will just say print I am a dependency. Now remember, whatever you print within your fast API script does not get shown to the client. It only shows in your terminal. So you can actually use print for debugging sake, right? But then whatever you put in prints in a print function will not get displayed on a client end. Okay, please. This will only show in your terminal. So I could just put there I am a dependency, and then inside my route function, then I think that immediately after the function declaration, I'll just put another thing here saying I am a route function. Okay. So now, since we have a dependency to this route, it simply means that when we visit this route, we should do what? We should see this message displayed before this message, right? Now, the reason for that is that our route is depending on this function. So it means that this function was we execute first before even proceeding to what to get to this point here, to our route function itself. Right. So it means that everything here will execute completely before even starting to do what? To execute whatever we have in our route function. So let's go back and let's visit that route one more time. And of course, we have the same result, but then if you go to our terminal, you could see what I'm saying. So you could say that we have I am a dependency, and that print statement is what is coming from the dependency itself here. So it means that before we even get to where we have I'm a route function, something somewhere have executed already before even getting to our route function. Do we understand? Do we understand? Do we
So please,
understand?
can you explain that
Do we
again?
understand? All right. Where exactly should I start explaining?
Everything.
All right. Okay. All right. So let's go over it again. Let's go over it again. Dependencies. What exactly are these are dependencies? What exactly are dependencies, Mr. Duncan?
Dependencies are functions or classes that your route function depends on.
Exactly. All right. All right. Exactly. That is what a dependency is. So now let's have a simple scenario, right? Now let's say that we're in school, right? That we are all going to school, and then in order for us to go to school, we have to wait for what? For the school bus to come to our house, pick us up, and transport us to what? To school. So it means that yes, of course, you want to go to school, but then in order for you to go to school, you're depending on a school bus. So it means that you can't actually arrive at school without that school bus, then we're coming to get you. Same thing happens here. So we have a route, okay? This route there. So and then once a user make a request to that endpoint, it means that before the request even gets to the endpoint, that this endpoint is depending on another function somewhere. So it means that before we even get to do what to send back a response body, that a function needs to actually execute first before doing what? Getting to execute whatsoever we have in our route. All right. So we now put on what? We now put out a simple function, and then we assume that function to what? To act as a dependency, something that we can that our route function can hope on or can depend on, right? So, and then within this function, we said that we have an instruction that should add 10 plus 10. And then the result of that expression should be saved in a variable called result, right? Now, after that, then we want to go ahead and display an information saying I'm a what? I'm a dependency, of course, because that is what that is to be seen as a dependency. And then at the end of it all, we want to return the value of the variable result. Now, that function they can stay there and can never get executed at all, right? And can never get executed at all. But then we assuming that we also have a route that we are hoping to do what? To make use of whatever value of result for further processing in what within our route function. Then we can simply do what? Pass that function as a dependency to our route, and then that function will get to execute first before whatever instruction we have within our route function gets to do what? To execute. And in order to let fast API know that that particular function should be seen as a dependency, we make use of a function called depend, which is what we have here, right? And then we simply say depend is a function that takes in what your function name or your class name, right? Whichever one you use in declaring your dependency, which in this particular function. So you could say that what we did here really well, we simply passed in the function name rather than doing what invoking the function within that within the dependency function itself. So we only pass in the function name itself. And then that way, Fast API knows that that man there, because what is a dependency. And then as such, once a request is made to this route, that function should execute first before proceeding to execute whatever instruction we have left in our route function. Do we follow up to that point? Do we follow up to that point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, where's Duncan? Wonderful. Duncan is on the call. All right. So now once 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 fast API, right, sees that come across that dependency, what happens is that it will first of all execute the dependency function or class, whichever one you use. But like I said, for this track, it will basically be it will basically be a function. So invoke that function and do what and execute whatever instruction is within that function. And then if you have assigned this to what to a variable, then whatever value is is being returned from that function can be saved to what to this variable. And then if you see it or using that result, then we can further go ahead and use it within your route function. And then before finally getting to the what to generate your response body. So your dependencies execute first before whatever instruction is left in your route function before getting towards to sending back a response body. And that is what we did. And so that when we now arrived at this URL, of course the dependency did execute. And then we had this message here from the dependency function, right, saying that I'm a dependency. And then whatever value was being returned from that dependency, we further used it in the route function. And then we added 100 to that value and then sent it back as a response to the client finally. Do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So that's basically the concept of dependency. That's basically what how dependencies have been done in fast API. So you can they're basically used to do what to inject code to your route functions. Okay, they're basically used to do that, to inject code or logic or resources into what? Into your route handlers or your route functions. Okay, so they can be used for so many purposes, right? They can be used for so many purposes, like such as authentication and the rest of them. So basically, you want to make sure that, assuming you have a route that someone needs to be logged in first before doing what, before accessing that resource from that route. So you don't want a situation where someone will just visit the route and everything just goes through, right? So first of all, you want to have a dependency somewhere that should check if that request has a valid credentials before doing what, finally passing them to what, to the route function to fetch the appropriate resources. And that is what we will do when we move to authentication. Then you really see the beauty of dependencies, right? So you can actually use it for what, for access control and the rest of those things. So there are simple concepts like that, but then they can be used in diverse ways, like authentication, right, or configuration, right? Probably you want to set some certain configuration for each request, then then dependency can come in there. All right. Okay. All right. So let's see. One more thing again that we can know about dependencies is that these people can also take in parameters. Okay, they can take in route parameters, they can take in query parameters, path, and the rest of them. So within my dependencies, I have a value, say a comma b, right? A comma b. It simply means that what, that this dependency is expecting what, two values, which in this case, once we inject these dependencies to a route function, a and b will automatically be considered as well as query parameters, right? So they'll be seen exactly as if they are being what, they are being declared in what, in a route function. So now if you go back and we try to access this route, then it turns out that we are missing two required parameters. Now that required parameters is not really from your route function, it's from your dependency, right? Your dependency actually forces that route to do what, to to take in what, two parameters, A and B. So if we go back and then we try to do what, to access this in this one, then this should throw an error for us saying that what, that we are missing query parameters A comma B. But the thing is that our route function itself does not take in any parameters. It only takes in one parameter, which in this case was a dependency. But then that dependency does what, further insisted that what, that it's expecting what, a query parameter, say A and B, A comma B. You can also take in path parameter, right? So this, since we don't have what, a declarator for a function, for sorry, for a dependency like this, right? So to declare path parameter here would be different. So it will be similar to what we've been doing with the cookie and the header, right? So what we could simply, we could just simply copy this man here and then just take it to our dependency, and then probably say we also expect a value called C, but this time around C should be what, should be a path parameter, path, right? And when we go back again to access this, then we could see that what, that this man also expects what, two query parameters and one path parameter. So you have what, path parameter here, right? Being what, being C, and what, and query parameter being A, and then another query parameter here being B. So your dependencies can also take in those parameters. So now that's the difference between what, a dependency and what, an actual function invocation, right? An actual function invocation. So now your dependency works almost like your route function, right? Except that it actually gets executed first before the route function itself, and what, it can also take in these parameters. But then if I come within my route function, because I'm pretty sure that most of us have that in our head now, why don't we just come within this function and just type in these things, right? And just come here and probably just invoke dependency one. Now, once you do this, this is you're calling what, a main function that can take in any parameter, right? but then this function now here, right, cannot work with your request. But then with your dependency, you can work with the request, right? You can carry out some settings, some configuration, some authentication techniques. But then if I remove this result from here, and then move this man here, and then also remove this man from here, and then invoke dependency inside what your route function. Now dependency here is no longer seen as a dependency. It's now seen as what, as function invocation. In three parameters, A, B, and C. A and B can be anything. It can be a string, it can be an integer, right? So it simply means that this dependency can no longer work with your request itself. So now if you show us the fast API expected error, like query and the rest of them. So it's not what internal server. So it means that somewhere is a bug, and which in this case, what is this function that we try to invoke? Because this function is expecting what? Is expecting two parameters, three parameters, right? And these parameters can be anything, A, B, or it can be string, integer, float, or the rest of them, right? So that is no longer what a dependency, because that request went straight to your route function. So then that function actually got executed inside the route function and not before the route function. But dependency does execute before the route function. But in this case, what happened? This route function has executed. That's when we are getting to this point, right? So that makes it a function invocation and not a dependency. Dependency will invoke before the route function. But function invocation waits for what? For request to come to the function route, and then it get invoked inside the function route, not after or not before. Well, do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. That actually makes sense. Okay. So that is that about dependency. And that is that about dependency. So like I said, our classes will tend to be shorter. So these concepts are quite simple and straightforward like this. Okay, and then we start to see them in fantastic use, and when we start moving forward, we start seeing how this book can work in, or how we can implement them to implement to make it to solve certain tasks within our fast API application. So like I mentioned one, that this can be used for authentication, which is what we will definitely use for what? For authentication. Miss Precious, your hand is up. You have a question.
Okay, good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
So please, what did you import in the beginning? Because mine is showing me invalid syntax.
We imported the depends because we need this function to let fast API know that a specific function should be seen as dependency. So this function, that depends function, they takes in either your function name or your class name, whichever one you use as dependency. So we imported this depends, and then our route function, we do what? We passed it to the route function, and then we pass in our name to it. And that was what we did.
But
Any
so mine is still showing me invalid syntax.
Right,
I
please
did
drop.
the same.
Right, please drop a screenshot of it in the group so we know how we can come through and help us out. All right. Any other question? While we're waiting for that to come up.
Sir, when import good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, please, when you're importing, does your virtual environment need to be activated if you are trying to import an API?
Yes, your virtual environment needs to be activated. That's because yes, it needs to be activated. Reason that is where your interpreter is. Right. So if it activates it, then there's something that you import and Python is not aware of it. So that would turn an error. So your virtual environment
Okay, thank you, sir.
Right. Any other question before we proceed? Any other question before we proceed? Right. So the silence means no other question. Right. So that's basically how or the concept of dependencies. Like I said, our classes will always be short. So for those of us that like coming an hour after, you may actually come an hour after and we're done. Right. But then before we close for today, let's look at what we call sub-dependency. So sub-dependencies are what are basically dependency that depends on another dependency. All right. So for those of us that are back then in school, that we are depending on someone, and that someone is what is also depending on another someone, right? So you see how the thing goes. A dependency that is depending on another dependency. So now the dependency that is depending on another dependency makes that other dependency a sub-dependency. You understand? Do we get the logic? Right. So let's put up another dependency here. And I will call this man dependency 2. And I'll take off these people for now. And we also have this called dependency 2. Right, dependency 2. Now, within here, I basically just want to return hello. Wow. That's the only thing that's the only thing we want to do. What we want to do return for that dependency 2. Now, the thing here is that if dependency 2, right, actually depends on dependency 1, dependency 1 will now become what? A sub-dependency for dependency 2. And then when we pass dependency 2 to our route, dependency 2 now becomes what? A dependency to our route. But then in order for dependency 2 to execute, dependency 1 needs to do what? Execute first, right? Making dependency what? A sub-dependency to what? To dependency 2. Does that make sense?
So please, can you take it again?
All right. Okay. So sub dependencies, right? Basically dependencies that another dependency is depending on. Let me see if I can put that out here. So sub dependency, right? Basically a dependency, or a dependency, and then see that another dependency, forgive my typo error, dependency is depending on. Does that make sense? So if dependency 2 is depending on dependency 1, dependency 1 is what is the sub dependency. Do you understand? Should I come again?
Yes, sir.
I should come again.
Yes, come
Yes,
again,
sir.
please.
All right. So I said, right, so if dependency 2, right, is depending on dependency 1, that dependency 1 is what is the sub, sorry, that's not comments in Python. That dependency 1 is the sub dependency. So this man here would be the sub dependency. Now it is a sub dependency because dependency 2 is what is depending on it. So it means that what that dependency 2 is a dependency. This is the actual dependency here. Because if we were to actually invoke or use one of these dependency, we are likely going to use dependency 2, because dependency 2 will do what? Will further depend on what? On dependency 1, which will make dependency 1 what? A sub dependency. So I could just do what? Same thing that we did on our route function. I could just simply come here and be like, okay, I am expecting a result, but then this result I'm expecting it to come from dependency 1, which should act as what? As dependency. So dependency 1, well, dependency one will not be passed as a dependency to what to dependency two, making dependency one what a sub dependency to dependency two, and then I can then further pass this dependency two as a dependency to our route function. Here. And here could be X or message. And then this one around, this should be dependency two. Do you understand the order now? Do you understand the order? Should I say it again? Are we there?
Yes, sir, we're here.
All right. So do we understand? Should I re-explain that again?
Yes, sir, please take it one more time. Sorry.
All right, no problem. All right. So now we have two dependencies, right? We have dependency one. We have dependency two, right? Now let's assume that I want to pass dependency two as what as a dependency to what our route function or our route handler. Okay, what do? We simply pass dependency two to what to that route. Do you understand up to this point?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please. So it simply means that if I should navigate to this endpoint, that what happens? That I'm expecting X or message here to be what hello world, right? Because that is what the end product of that dependency. The end, because your dependency at the end of it is what it should return a response or return a value, and then that value can be gotten from a variable. So basically, what you can assign that whole dependency stuff to a variable, and then you can do what access the value from that dependency from your route function, which is what we did here. So if I intended to have this value of hello world, or if I see need of using it, I can do what I can just simply inside my route function, I can simply just say print message, and what I'll have that I'll have I will have that value from that dependency, right? Do we follow up to that point?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I want to be sure that we followed up to that point. But then there's also another problem. Now, once we try to invoke dependency two to give us what this value of hello world, dependency two went ahead to do what to further invoke our dependency, because that's what we just did here. So it went ahead to do what to invoke a dependency one. So it means that before we even get to return hello world, that this man here up there will execute completely. And then if dependency two had used the result from that dependency one, then before coming back to to invoke the to do what to execute the remaining part of dependency two before finally getting to our route function. Do you understand? Do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's just put a simple message across all these dependencies. So I put here I am dependency one, and I'll copy this and put here I am dependency two, and I am a route function. Right. So let me remove this man. It means that once we navigate to this route, right, I'm expecting these messages to show in this order. I am dependency one, I am dependency two before I am a route function. Now, why is that? Because when the request gets to this endpoint, this dependency for this route is what is dependency two, right? And which is this man here, right? But then in order for us to now show I am a dependency two now with ahead to do what to depend on another dependency called dependency one. So that means that one has to invoke first before itself, right? So that means this man here will do what will show an dependency one before coming back to do what to now invoke for dependency two before it finally gets to what to our route function. Right, so let's try that and let's see. So if I refresh this, yeah, that went through, and we should see it in that order. So you can say dependency one, dependency two, and then finally I'm a route function. Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone that's lost? That's confused? Anyone?
Sorry.
Who's asking the question? I'm hearing like two people. Who's asking the question?
So I have a question. It's Duncan.
All right, Mr. Duncan, what's the question?
So why is it not showing in Chrome? Like
Why
the
is what?
dependency. Why is the dependencies not showing in Chrome? It's supposed to show in only your terminal.
Like, you mean this print statement?
Yes.
I remember before I said that whatever wherever you use print statement in your first API application, it will not display because we are sending back only HTTP response. Print statement is just displaying something, not actually an HTTP response, right? So fast API is a framework that only sends back HTTP response. So it means that at the end of each endpoint, is sending back an HTTP response, right? So and then once you now say print is just display, but then you're displaying on the current measure, like on your terminal. So I said that before I ever started using that print, I said it that whatever we put in the print function, we only get displayed in our terminal, in our terminal. So whatever you print, so print can be used for debugging. So let's say that your route, your request went through, but then you're getting a very not too wonderful or not a desired response. Then you can start putting prints line by line to see what is actually happening, and then whatever you put in that print only shows in your terminal. So it's not actually being get sent to the client. So what is being gets and what is actually being sent back to the browser is whatever you're sending as the final output in your route handler, in your route function or route handler. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question?
Yes, sir.
Right, go ahead.
Sir, please, is there a limit to the number of dependencies we can have?
No, you can have as many dependencies as you want. You can have as many dependencies as you want. Any other question? Any other question? Excuse me. Any other question?
Excuse me, sir.
Right, go ahead.
So please, it's not pertaining to what you asked. It's for the last class. I don't know if there is a video for it, sir.
There was no class in our previous in the class. We had some issues. As such, we
Okay,
can't do classes. We put on.
okay, sir.
So, one last dependency before we wrap it up for today. We have what we call a global dependency, meaning that these are basically dependency that lives in our entire route. So it means that this dependency can be passed to all our routes, to all our routes. So it means that you can have one route. So let's assume that you intend to use this dependency. So what basically I want to do, I want to carry this dependency up after. Remember, your dependency needs to live before wherever is being invoked. So let's assume that I intend to use these dependencies in all our routes in our in our in our in our application. I intend to use all these dependencies in all the entire route. So it wouldn't be nice if I should go up one by one and start doing or putting them for each route function, right? So what I can simply do is I can simply just pass it in the instance of our fast API, and it will pass it to all the routes in your application, all the routes, all of them. So as such, that kind of dependency can be called a global dependency, a dependency that's been sent to all the entire route. Okay. So how do we do this? Then we could simply go back to where you have the instance of your fast API. This line where you have fast API and then you do what? You invoke it. The fast API function can also carry some parameters. One of the parameters they can carry is called dependencies. So you could see dependencies here. And then this man here takes in a list of dependencies. So whatever you're passing here, you must pass in what? A list. Even if you're passing only one dependency, you must pass it in as a list. So how do you create a list? In Python, we do what? We do square brackets. We do square brackets. And then within this, we can do what? We can pass in those dependencies. If you have one, then simply just pass one. If you have more than one, simply just pass them as one as a list of dependencies. Which in this case we have just one dependency, which in this case what is dependency two. Dependency one, this one is a sub dependency. So you don't want to always pass sub dependencies. You want to pass the dependency itself, right? And then the dependency itself, we go ahead to do what? To invoke the sub dependencies. So to pass these dependencies, we simply still use the depends function. And then we do what? We pass in the function name, which in this case, dependency two. And with that, trust me, whenever you do what, whenever you visit any route, that dependency will get executed, right? So if I go back again, so let me just go back to the down here, and I'll remove what we have here, and then visit this route again, and then you just see that that dependency was still passed down that route. So if I go back again, then I refresh this one. Now, if I should go back to our VS Code, we should now see those messages. So you can see that actually went through. Those dependencies actually went through for that route. And that will happen for every route you have in your application. So as far as you've passed your dependency to the fast API function itself, it can be considered as a global dependency. Question. Global dependency. Question. Any question? Any question? All right. Silence means no question. Ebere Ikechukwu, okay, you have a question. Go ahead and ask a question.
All right, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, please, can you repeat this global dependency?
All right. So global dependency is more like you passing your dependency to each of the routes, to each of your route handler. And if you have like 10,000 routes, then that means you have to explicitly go and be passing it 10,000 routes, right? So that let's assume that you want all your routes to do to pass through the process of authentication. In that case, you don't want to be going each route and doing what and be passing the dependency for verifying user authentication. So what you could do is you could go to your instance of your fast API where you invoke fast API, which is in this case here, we have fast API and then what it was actually invoked, that line there. Then within your fast API instance can carry parameters. So there are some optional parameters that this man can carry. One of them is what is called dependencies, right? So what you can pass in that parameter of dependencies. And then this parameter takes in what a list of dependencies. So it means that even if you have just one dependency, you must pass it as a list to that dependency, to that parameter. Okay, which is what we did here, which we created what a list of what, and then we pass in what the dependency that we want. And we still pass it similar to how we did it in our route function back there. The depends, right? Followed by what? Followed by the dependency itself. And what will happen is that dependency will now cut across all your routes in your application. So if you have even if you have 10,000 routes, then it will cut across what 10,000 routes without you going explicitly to type it out in each of the routes, right? So you could actually imagine the stress of doing that. So if you have a general dependency that you intend to use, so you basically want to use that dependency in all the routes, okay? Because if you have a specific route that you don't want that dependency to be used there, then the global dependency is not what you want to actually go for, right? So global dependency will pass that dependency to all your routes, all of them, right? All of them. So if that is the case, then you can actually option in for that. But if you intend to use these dependencies in just few routes, then you can go ahead and do one and pass it in to those routes explicitly. That's how global dependency works compared to the other way that we actually did initially. Do you understand? Mr. Ebere, do you understand? Mr. Ebere is still with us.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir.
Right. Any other question? Any other
Yes,
question?
sir.
All right. You
Yes,
go ahead and
sir.
ask. Go ahead and ask the question,
Sir,
Miss.
please, when you run the server, it's not returning the result and the
When
hello world.
when
Sir.
when you,
Like, sir, when you run the server, the dependency does not return the result and the hello world.
the dependency does not return,
The result.
I think I am lost. I didn't really get that question. Of course, it will. It will. Let me. Can you send us a screenshot of what you mean? It will return the result. Is Miss Precious still there with us?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. So, what do you mean by it's not returning the result?
So my own, when I run the server, it's not returning the result
You
and
can.
the hello world.
You should. It should, of course, return that. It should. Can you send? Right, okay. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
All right.
Yes,
So
sir.
okay, okay. So I actually joined with on another device. All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Let's see. All right. So Miss Pressure, right? I believe your question was your dependencies are not executing.
Yes, sir.
Please can you show us that? Let me see that from your. Can you put a screenshot to us? Let's see. So I'll create a very simple file here. So this is another device. So I just create a simple file. Call this one app1.py. All right. So I'm still waiting for that, but just to be sure of what you're saying, so I'll just go ahead and I'll just copy this one. Let's create a new. Okay. Demo. So I'll copy this one. And all right. Special please, we're still waiting for you though. But then your dependencies should work. Dependencies should work. So we have a global one here saying dependencies. List of but again, simple dependencies. I'm gonna say sorry. Are you still with us? Mr. Pressure is Miss Pressure still with us?
Yes, sir.
Have you dropped? Okay, let's see. Screenshots. All right, let's see what we have here. Well, that looks okay. So why is it not coming up? Like you mean the dependency is not displaying on the client side? Is that what you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the thing is that dependency won't actually whatever you have within your dependency, if you intend to use that value and then send it back to your client, okay, what you have to now do is you can now explicitly for that particular route, you can now explicitly in pass the dependency to that route, and then you can do a send back that value. So let's assume that we have this very simple dependency here. So this one is different from what we did. This is from another device. So let's assume that we have this dependency here that we have right here, and we have the global. So that dependency happens to be a global, and let's also assume that we have like as many routes as possible. But then let's say for this particular route, I intend to use the value of that dependency, right? So what I can now do is I can just simply come here and then probably could just say dependency one, or probably value, I'll call that value X, right? And then just assign it to what to, I have to now come here and explicitly pass that dependency if I intend to use the value. But then if you don't intend to use the value, but then you want that dependency to execute for all your routes, then you don't have to explicitly do this, except you intend to use the value as Miss Precious has said so. Right. So then you want to do this, and then you can go ahead and just pass in the value. And here you could just send it back to the client if you intend to, and that should be okay. So when you go to your browser, then that should work just fine. So if I go to browser now, and then navigate, let's go back to my browser. Man, he'll be running on another part. So let me go ahead and put on my environment, my server, sorry. So this should be UVCon app, and then app, and then next thing you want to do is dash reload simply. That should give you a server up and running. Just copy that, and then go to your browser, and then just paste this down here. So this should be HTTP. I'll copy without the H. And then you could have what your value as what has been passed down there. So you can have your hello world there. So that's if you intend to pass any value from your dependency to the client, then you have to pass that value directly to your route function, and then you can send it back as a response back to the client. But then know that whatever you pass, or whatever is within your print function cannot be displayed on the client end. And whatever value is being returned from your dependency can also be sent directly to your client, except you explicitly do that, right? But then now those values can be accessed within your route function, like what we've just done here. We simply access it within our route function by doing what? By passing it to a variable called X. And then we can do what? Simply get the value of that X. All right. And if I wanted to do what? To pass it to a client, which in this case I just did, then you can do what? You can simply just pass it to your client, to the client end. You understand? Do you understand?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. Any other question? Any other question? Any other question? All right. So the silence means no other question. Silence means no other question. So as usual, please stacks is very, very important. Miss Messi Jackson, is she still with us?
Yes, Sammy. I'm here.
Can you do well to send back my host, please?
So please, what did you say?
You are not the host of this meeting.
Okay. So please, how do I do that?
Any of you can just highlight on me and make me host, please. If you go to the list of participants, then there should be a 3 dots or probably an option for more, and then you could see make server as a host. So you can try that, or Miss Precious, whoever wants to do that. Have you seen that option?
No, sir, I've not seen it.
Precious, have you seen that option on your end? You should see it. You should
No,
see it.
sir.
We can.
So there's no option.
Is it a 3 dots? Is it if you highlight on my name? Okay. Are you using your mobile device or using your
Now I'm using my phone.
Your laptop, your
No
phone,
phone. Mobile device, yeah.
your mobile device. All right. So okay, no worries, no worries. Okay. Is there any other question before I wrap it up for tonight? Any question? Right. No question, please. Miss Jackson, Miss Mercy Jackson, please, you can end the meeting for all. Not leave the don't leave the meeting. End the meeting for all. All right.
Okay.
All right. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Have a wonderful good night rest. Bye.
All right.